Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys and offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by J.P. Morgan Chase, a partner in financial planning. Looking ahead to retirement, growing your business, or for commercial banking, J.P. Morgan Chase offers advice and solutions tailored to individual needs and client well-being. More information is at jpmorganchase.com. And by Luba Workers Comp, a regional insurance carrier dedicated to providing reliable workers' compensation coverage to employers and workers in 13 states across the Southeast. With personalized service, trusted expertise, and tailored solutions, Luba helps businesses protect what matters most. Discover more at lubawc.com.
From Collins on St. Charles Avenue in Uptown New Orleans, we're Out to Lunch with Peter Raschuti, Tulane University A.B. Freeman School of Business professor and director of the Birkenroad Reports. It's business, New Orleans style.
Hi, I'm Peter Raschuti. Welcome to Out to Lunch. You may have heard people who started up businesses talking about how they found investors. Typically, they'll say something like, "We pitched our idea and raised X amount." Well, it sounds simple, but when you dig a little deeper, delivering a successful pitch to investors is not quite as straightforward as describing your business as the Uber of dating or Airbnb for pets. Financing a startup requires convincing investors or lenders they're taking a worthwhile risk. Crafting this calculated risk into a convincing sales pitch, which can be in the shape of a business plan or a presentation known as a pitch deck, is a special skill. And it's what Camille Turk does for her company, Turk Consulting. Camille, welcome to Out to Lunch.
Thank you for having me.
Tey Stiteler came up with her business idea after she and her partner bought 4 acres of land near Poplarville, Mississippi. Now, Tey was looking for a reason to quit her desk job and work outdoors. With absolutely no background in farming or horticulture, Tey started growing flowers. And she grew a lot of flowers. She started meeting other people who grew flowers. Tey began selling her flowers at markets and pop-ups around New Orleans. Then in 2024, she went all in and opened a brick and mortar business on Camp Street. It's called The Secret Spot Flowers. Tey, welcome to Out to Lunch. Camille, I don't know if you've heard a podcast called Discover, but it's a daily news roundup from an AI platform called Perplexity. The interesting thing about this podcast is it's assembled, written, and presented without the involvement of a single human being, including the host, which is totally believable. It's an AI-generated voice. Now, what I'm getting at is, if I can be replaced by AI, I'm assuming you could too. So this is a 2-part question. 1, can AI do your job, write a business plan and make a pitch deck? And 2, do you use AI in creating these products for your clients?
That's a good question. AI has definitely changed what I do. I've been doing this for 20 years, and there are some elements to it that you can get some assistance from AI for sure. And I do use it sometimes for market research, for example. But really, it's still, the old adage is trash in, trash out. So if you don't know what you're doing, it just doesn't come out that great. And talking to investors and pitching your idea is really about storytelling. And I help my clients tell their story through a traditional business plan or in a pitch deck format in a way that also matches the story that I'm telling in their financial projections. And so, number 1, you cannot do the financial projections in AI at all. I mean, that just definitely doesn't work at all. So that's a big part of my job. And I need the financial projections to tell the same story that's in the pitch deck and tell it in such a compelling way that the investor will say yes.
Tey, there's a lot of things you could have done with 4 acres of Mississippi land. Planting flowers sounds idyllic and romantic, but horticulture is not for the faint of heart. And the same can be said for the treacherous life of retail. Now you have a flower farm and a retail outlet. They're both very different occupations and require very different skill sets. People who farm talk about being a slave to the weather and the fickleness of their crops, and retailers talk about being a slave to the store. How do you balance these 2 equally demanding occupations? How do you divide up your day?
That's a great question. I actually like to say that we have 3 businesses under one. We have the farm, which supplies the flowers to the shop. We have the retail space, which then sells the flowers and other gifts. And then a real backbone of the business is our weddings and events business as well, where we actually design and have a studio where we design with the flowers. So yeah, we're still figuring out how to be in 3 places at once, but we do have a wonderful team. We have a great manager at our shop, and then we also have a team of freelancers that we work with, and my partner is incredibly helpful doing all of the weeding at the farm whenever I can't be there at the same time.
Now, one of the principles of your business is sustainability and freshness. You don't use the chemicals that flower sellers and supermarkets and other outlets might use to keep their flowers looking fresh. So your flowers are going to be, well, they're going to naturally fade, wilt, or die in a matter of days. So how do you know how many flowers to pick or buy for any given day?
Well, I would say that not necessarily all of them do fade in 3 or 4 days. Some of them last for a long time, including some of the flowers that I brought today can last, 7 to 10 days. But when we are designing and when we're growing, we're choosing not just for longevity. We're also picking something that might be beautiful or might have a scent. So I would say that longevity is not necessarily always a priority whenever we're growing and selling flowers. And I think that education is a big part of that, of the consumer, to say, hey, especially for weddings, they just need to last that one day and be beautiful. But when you're selecting something for at home, we might put a variety of different flowers in there so that as certain things fade, you still have other beautiful flowers that will continue looking beautiful.
And Camille, I would guess part of your job is getting people with lofty visions to see things realistically. How do you get a client to find the balance between ambition and achievable results?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that is a common issue. I try to explain to all my clients that we are not putting together a plan of goals. This is not a goal-setting session. This is a plan that is more realistic and conservative that investors will believe. And the worst thing you can do is really oversell by a landslide and then underdeliver. So, I have that talk right up front, and most people understand that.
I was going to say, I know you're a Tulane graduate, undergrad, and MBA, and how business school has changed over the years is now we're viewing storytelling as a big part of the curriculum.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so you were way ahead of everybody else. We'll have you come in and teach. But you have one more. Part of your business that really interests me is you're next to a bar restaurant called Junebug.
Yes.
Do you work together?
We do. They're actually, they're my landlord and sort of like my roommate. And we have such a beautiful symbiotic relationship in that, well, one, there's just a natural crossover, I think, with flowers and the kitchen and things like that. So that already goes together, but we have a wonderful partnership in that the flower shop, when it's not being used in the evenings, can actually be transformed into an event space and can become the bar for the event space. And then as such, too, we supply the restaurant with flowers. Maybe they're not quite fit for sale, but they would still look beautiful on a table in the restaurant. So we do that. It's a really beautiful relationship that we have.
Did you go out and get funding, by the way, or you're still on your own?
We're still on our own. We didn't get funding. It is something I considered. And
That's
had
why
this
I brought you here
partnership,
today.
had we not had this very specific partnership, I don't think that this could have been done without having any sort of capital investment. And this is where I could have really used someone like Camille's help, because the margins on flowers aren't great. So it would have taken a lot of, I think, creativity and convincing to get an investor.
And Camille, what's always been said about New Orleans is that you got a lot of creative people with interesting ideas for businesses, but a real shortage of capital, particularly risk capital. Is that still the case?
Well, we've had an influx of capital recently with the SSBCI program. It's finally starting to trickle in. It's a federal source of funding, and it was $113 million given to the state of Louisiana. And for it flows through venture capital funds. For nonprofit venture capital funds, like Tulane has one, Tulane Innovation Institute, it's a 1-to-1 match for investors. And for-profit VC funds, like Boot 64, it's a 4-to-1 investor match. So it's a really great incentive for investors to come in and invest in seed, early stage companies like my clients.
Yeah, I bet the. By the way, before we get any further, what do you think we should do with her? Do you think if you decided to scale or such a, we'll use you as an example. We're not lending you money or anything.
I'm very curious.
There's,
yeah.
I mean, she could go the avenue of a bank loan or venture capital or private equity if she was willing to give up part of the company. What do you tell people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So people usually call me looking for money, and I have to kind of explain how raising money works and help them decide, well, it's not usually a decision, but help them understand whether they're better suited for bank funding, a loan from a bank, or for investor equity. And it's usually not either or. I mean, it's usually not and both, but you have to, like local small businesses like restaurants can only really, are best suited for bank funding. But if you have a tech company, a bank is not going to, you cannot get SBA funding really for a new tech startup. You would need to go to investors for that. And so I help people decide who to approach and how to format their materials to ask for that money.
Why is that? Why would someone have to go to the bank versus for the tech company, for example? Why wouldn't they get bank funding?
Yeah, the SBA and bank fund. So most bank funding for small businesses is through the SBA program, through an SBA-backed loan, and they really want 3 years of historical financials. They want 3 years of experience to make a decision, or they want significant collateral. Mm-hmm. So a real estate deal is better suited for a bank. Mm-hmm. And for example, the SSBCI money is not allowed to be invested in real estate. Mm. So that's another kink in the plan for Louisiana right now. So for SSBCI funding. So if you have like a tech startup or a new medical device startup and you have an unproven market, then you're really better suited for investors who are willing to take a risk on you.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Peter Raschuti. I'm talking with Camille Turk from Turk Consulting and Tey Stiteler from the Secret Spot Flowers. We'll continue our conversation when we come right back from this short break.
Out to Lunch is brought to you by Basics Underneath. Fine lingerie, personalized fitting, curated swimsuits and workout wear. Uptown on Magazine Street and at basicsunderneath.com. And by Tracy Moore, broker, realtor, and partner at Rev Realtors, offering over 20 years of experience representing buyers, sellers, and investors. Learn more at tracy.revrealtors.com.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Peter Raschuti. I'm talking with Camille Turk from Turk Consulting, where they specialize in guiding businesses through the fundraising process, and Tey Stiteler from flower shop The Secret Spot Flowers. You know, Tey, I was wondering, now that you have brick and mortar facility, do you still do the pop-ups, farmers markets, that kind of thing?
We will be doing sort of pop-ups within the space. So I think that's also something that's very interesting in what we're doing in a way that maybe a traditional flower shop didn't before. And we will do that in the sense that we have art that is in this space. So we might have artist talks or workshops or things like that. So yes and no, in the sense that, like, yes, we will continue to have really interesting programming, but it will be within the brick and mortar itself.
You know, a couple of times we've had on this the founder of an enormously successful business, Painting with a Twist, and you have you learn to, let's see, what would the word be? You put flower bouquets together, teach people how to do that. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, it's a very relaxing experience.
Do you add booze?
Yeah, well, with Junebug next door, we have such an excellent cocktail and wine program that also has its roots in sustainability. So there's really beautiful crossover there. And yeah, flowers and wine, great combination.
And Camille, how does the business work? Do you charge by hour or by project, or?
Yes, I charge by the hour.
And some, I imagine, take a lot more time than others.
Yes, that's true. And also sometimes clients come to me and they only need financial projections, or they only need a pitch deck. Or sometimes people come to me and they say, should I do this? What do you think? And I call that a venture feasibility analysis. They're pretty rare, but I think they're really smart.
Geez, I can't imagine when you're the other part is, and to bring up school again, but we've started a Toastmasters club to get people more comfortable with public speaking. Do you have to do that too to get them? Because people hate speaking, and they hate asking for money. So this is excellent.
Yes, yes, that's a really good point. So I wasn't doing that for a long time, and then I had one of my clients show up to an angel investor network meeting, and they said, Camille Turk did my pitch deck, but I'm just going to put it aside and talk off the cuff.
Boy.
And they said that, and I got feedback from the investors that my client did not do very well and rambled a lot. So I now have practice sessions with every client where we work out the kinks and make sure they feel comfortable before they go in the room.
But it's not your fault.
They
You just
said,
didn't read it.
No, dude, Camille's pitch.
You know, Tey, I've got to say, if the name of the place is the secret spot, it's usually not good for retail. You're supposed to tell people where you are.
Sure, yeah. Well, the name is actually from our family had a farm in Pennsylvania that wasn't really a working farm. We called it the farm. And as kids, we had a little area that we called the secret spot, and that's what it's named after. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's very.
It
That's
comes back
very
to the
cute.
storytelling that we were talking about. I think those kind of things actually make a difference.
Oh, I think they do, and I've known that when you go to a wedding, the flowers are a huge part of the expense.
Oh, yeah.
So do you have to work with the bride and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we work with couples. We work with planners.
Oh, the groom does have some say?
Yeah,
I never
or-
have gotten any
yeah,
say.
I think it just depends on how involved couples want to be in the design of their day. But yeah, it is something that I would encourage if anyone who's getting married or is hosting an event is interested to think about sooner rather than later. It usually is. It is the piece that sort of defines the aesthetic of the day, but it's usually the last thing that people think about after they're choosing their food and venue. So I would say try to squirrel away a little bit of that budget for flowers because they cost more than you think.
They
yeah.
really do. Well, I mean, big wedding, 10,000, something like that?
It really depends. I would say a big wedding could be for $40,000, $50,000.
Oh, wow.
We don't really specialize in those. Because again, our roots are in sustainability. Those are very difficult to do on a giant scale. But yeah, I would say that it just depends. It depends on what their vision is. You can have a beautiful day with just a bouquet, you know. So yeah, we try to design everything is intentional and it's designed with the couple in mind.
I tell you, this isn't a mean question, but I've had
Wow.
so many people on that have said they loved a space, that what they were doing, and then when they turned it into a business, it wasn't. They don't love it anymore now that it's a business. What about yours?
Well, I had always had business in mind. This wasn't like a passion project that just turned into a business. This was always something that I had planned to make a business. I think, the evolution into a brick and mortar is so close to my roots in hospitality. I love when people walk in the door. I love talking to them. It has actually just been such a joy. I will say certain elements of a business, like accounting, finances, HR, like those things are challenging, but that all comes with growth, and I think that's a really good thing.
I have to confess something. When I was 15, I worked at a church, and I used to have to clean up. And one of the things I'd do is I would clean up after funerals, and then I'd take the flowers to my girlfriend.
Oh, that's sustainable.
That's lovely. Okay, great,
Yeah, it's
great.
thoughtful
Not the right
and
way.
it's
I was going to
sustainable.
say that at
I love
confession.
that. No, that's good.
How is it different, Camille, when you have, I could back up a little bit. What is it you got to get into that pitch deck, and what is it they've got to say that it's going to it's going to resonate with the investor? What things have to be in that?
Well, there's pretty standard slides that need to be in every pitch deck. Usually start with why. Why are you doing this? What's the problem? What's the problem that you're solving? And that's really the most important slide. It's number one, why are you doing this? What's the problem that you're solving? The second, well, really the most important is your management team, though. You know, are you able to pull this off? Do they, you know, you really want to instill confidence in the investors that you're the right person to do this business. And when challenges arise, you're the right person to pivot and change directions and learn from market forces and whatever's going on in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that would be true. Some of these companies you're looking at, particularly on the tech side, there isn't much bench strength or anything like that. I mean, it's probably a small organization, right?
Yes. So all my clients are looking for money, so they're usually pretty small. With some of these, with some software concepts, like it's never existed before. And it's very hard for me to come up with projections based on something real because it is brand new. So it takes a lot of creativity, it takes a lot of research and scrappiness to try to get answers to our questions and come up with realistic assumptions to put into the plan. But what investors are really looking for is the exit. For those types of business plans, how am I going to make money at the end of the day? Who are we going to sell this to, or who are we going to, how are we going to raise money in the next round? What's the trajectory over the long term?
Well, you brought up something I was going to ask you anyway. Is that these investors? How long is their time frame?
Ideally, like 3 to 5 years, but I guess I'm giggling because it's always longer than that. That's what they're looking for, though. Sometimes it happens. It's hard to make that happen very quickly.
Now, Tey, are you glad you started this in the first place?
Oh, absolutely.
And how long have you been in it now?
Well, the farm started about 3 years ago, but before this, I was in corporate America. I was in hospitality, but I've been dreaming about this for probably 10 years and just doing a ton of research. So yeah, it's like a dream is finally, like I had always dreamed of having I always wanted a flower shop, plant shop, wine bar. And now Junebug is the wine bar next door, which I don't have to obviously manage, but I'm adjacent. So the farm started 3 years ago. We've learned a ton. You learn so much every season. And yeah, the brick and mortar has opened in May 2025. And yeah, happy every day. Don't sleep a lot, but I'm happy every day.
You know what I like is how frugal you are. Like, you've got, a Honda Fit with a stick shift.
Oh, my God, I'm so frugal.
And thank goodness,
My
because
sister
somebody's
says
still got to
I'm
remember
cheap.
how to drive a stick.
Yeah, well, I just learned how in October of, 2024.
But that's what I'm picturing, is you're taking this little car with your flowers into New Orleans, right?
Well, my partner, and by partner I mean my husband, he says that it's time to upgrade, but I'm so frugal. Because finances are such a big part and the margins aren't great in what we do. So yeah, I'm gonna be until that Honda Fit quits, which Hondas never do.
No, they have to shoot them at the end.
Is this a commercial for Honda? So yeah, very frugal.
Do you know what a Junebug is, by the way?
Yeah, of course I do. We don't want them in the garden,
Okay.
but it's also the restaurant and cocktail bar next door.
It's also the nickname of Dale Earnhardt in NASCAR. Just wanted to, it's
Speaking
going to
of
come up at a
Honda
party or
Fits,
something
yeah.
like that. Camille, where do you, when you meet a client, do you, I know you're customizing the presentation for the investor. Do you customize it for the person that's going to be making that presentation?
Yes, definitely. They are my client. I want them to be happy. And also, when we do our practice session together, sometimes they'll trip up over a slide or two, and I'll rearrange it so it feels more comfortable for them.
Are you there for that, by the way?
No, I'm not.
You like hiding in a closet? Going, oh, Janice, don't say that.
I know this is kind of the boring part, but basically, SEC regulations prevent me from influencing the sale of a security because I'm not a broker. So I'm very hesitant to go into that room or say anything that would influence the investors. So I stay out of it.
Well, can you name a couple of clients we might know?
Oh, yeah. Well, Bruzy had a nice exit.
yeah.
They were one of my clients. Wristband was one of my clients. They had a really big merger or acquisition
Who was
recently
that?
with
Was that the
AHS.
Solomon guy?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Conway Solomon. He was one of my favorite clients. Lovely to work with.
I know you're going to leave some people out and they're going to be angry, so we'll stop.
Well, I've got some. I wanted to mention. I do have a couple of clients that are. Well, Jam Nola was one of my clients, and they just opened a new 10,000 square foot facility on Frenchman, so that was really exciting. Yeah.
And what would you advise? What would you advise each other? Like, what have you learned that maybe would help Camille?
Oh boy, can we start with Camille first?
That's okay. All right.
Expert in this room.
What do you think? I mean, you know her business now. What would an investor want to know? Like, what do you make in that slide deck?
Would an investor even be interested in a
Well, if you're going to make a bunch of them.
Well, if you're going to expand,
Yeah.
if you're going to expand and you're going to open
Yeah.
up shops in 10 different cities, they would want to know how much is it going to cost to do so? How much would the capital expenditures be to get it started? And then what's the monthly recurring revenue, monthly recurring expenses, and all that? And what kind of payroll who do you need to hire to make that growth happen? And the hard part is marketing. If when a company goes national or regional, marketing can get very expensive. Yeah.
And so you don't do that, but you know people that do?
Yeah, I try to connect people with resources to help them along the way.
Well, that was your background, right? Marketing, hospitality thing?
It was hospitality. Marketing, I'm my own CMO right now, as well as my own CEO and all of those things. But no, I was in hospitality. I was in hotels before, which I think serves when we're talking about storytelling and having something that someone might actually want to connect with and buy. I think that hospitality is really important. Like, we're not Amazon. In fact, I don't think anyone would ever be interested in investing because we're not going to scale. That's just not, we just want to have a space that feels really welcoming and warm.
On the other hand, hotels need flowers.
Hotels do need flowers.
I knew
Hit
you
me
knew
up.
that. That was
Yeah.
that was really helping out. There's a question I've heard interviewers ask people. It's, if you could go back in time to when you were starting out, what would you tell your younger self? Now, don't worry, Tey and Camille, I'm not going to ask you that question. But there's no doubt that if you knew what roadblocks and curveballs and just downright weird, unexpected things were going to come up when you start down that path of founding and running a business, you might question your optimism and the wisdom of blind faith. On the other hand, when things work out, the ups and downs become a bunch of great stories. Tey and Camille, congratulations on your successes to date, and thanks for sharing your stories with us. Thank you both for joining me today on Out to Lunch.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. This was fun.
My guests on Out to Lunch today have been Camille Turk, owner of Turk Consulting, and Tey Stiteler, owner of the Secret Spot Flowers. We edited this show to fit into the time slot here on WWNO. You can hear our unedited conversation and find out more about Camille's business plans and Tey's flowers by listening to the Out to Lunch podcast. You can find and subscribe to the Out to Lunch podcast on your podcast app and on our website, itsneworleans.com. If you want to know what we all look like, you can find photos from the show on itsneworleans.com and on our Out to Lunch social media. These photos were taken today by Jill LaFleur. You can find more of Jill's photos at lafleurphoto.com. Out to Lunch is a production of INO Broadcasting for itsneworleans.com and WWNO 89.9 FM. The producer of our show is Grant Morris, our technical producer is Eric Merle, and our researcher is Amy Irvin. I'm Peter Raschuti. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to meeting you again next week around the lunch table for more business, New Orleans style, on Out to Lunch.
Out to Lunch was recorded live at Columns on St. Charles Avenue. Columns serves lunch and dinner 7 days a week, hosts weddings and private events, features evenings of live jazz and more. Reservations for dining and hotel rooms are at thecolumns.com. Columns is a member of New Orleans & Company. More information at neworleans.com. Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker. Established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys and offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by J.P. Morgan Chase, a partner in financial planning. Looking ahead to retirement, growing your business, or for commercial banking, JP Morgan Chase offers advice and solutions tailored to individual needs and client well-being. More information is at jpmorganchase.com. And by Luba Workers' Comp, a regional insurance carrier dedicated to providing reliable workers' compensation coverage to employers and workers in 13 states across the Southeast. With personalized service, trusted expertise, and tailored solutions, Luba helps businesses protect what matters most. Discover more at lubawc.com. Mitchell Foreman wrote and performs all the music on Out to Lunch. You can hear Mitchell's music anywhere great jazz is sold or streamed, and at mitchellforeman.com.